Hello and welcome to Center of Weirdness, the weird podcast about very weird stuff, but mostly we just talk about episodes of TV series that we find kind of strange. I'm Josh, and joining me as always is Skinner. Hey, Skinner.
Hey, everybody. You can just refer to me as that guy and him for the rest of the episode.
This is our first episode of 2023, and we thought New Year, New You, Nightman. So on this episode of the show, we are covering a show that we have referenced quite a bit, and we talked about covering. We're finally doing it. We're covering Nightman, episode 6 of season 1, Face to Face, from October 27th, 1997. I guess this was their Halloween episode.
Well, somebody's in disguise in a costume the entire time.
I guess that makes sense. There's someone wearing masks in this episode. We got a very special guest star in this episode.
And we have a favorite of the show in our series of podcasts. We have a Darkman.
Yeah, we do have a Darkman. This is kind of a Darkman type episode. This is a ridiculous show. If you have never heard of this show, I don't blame you. It was on from 97 to 98 somehow, or 99 rather. Somehow it got 2 seasons. I think it was mostly on, was this UPN?
I think it's UPN. This
or was syndicated maybe. I don't remember. Maybe WGN maybe.
No, aired in syndication.
Okay.
And this is the most syndicated show you've ever seen, and also the most 1997 show.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. Its last episode aired, I think, on my birthday, 1999.
And that is the most Josh birthday thing that could ever have happened.
Yes, of course. So if you don't know what Nightman is about, it's based on a comic book, originally a Malibu Comics comic book, but in the credits it says Marvel Comics because Marvel Comics purchased Malibu Comics and sort of integrated those characters into some of their series. I don't think much has happened with Nightman. I don't know if that's still an ongoing series or if they've tried to reboot it at any point.
He's fought Wolverine once, from what I've read real quick here. But, that's everyone. Even I fought Wolverine at least once.
I think he's kind of he was part of like Ultraverse, which was kind of a sort of Malibu Comics' X-Men Avengers type characters, I guess. They had another guy who was really big named Prime, I think. He just was like a super muscled out guy. He is a superhero. I don't really know exactly how the comic version works. It differs a little bit, but he in the show, he is a jazz musician who's very popular in San Francisco. I think
very popular. We can't stress this enough. He is incredibly popular.
They changed the name of the city. Like, it is clearly San Francisco, but I think they call it like Bay City at a certain point throughout the show. I think
like how in the Hammerman cartoon he's out of Oaktown instead of Oakland.
Yes. But like, he is a very popular jazz musician. And he works at this place called the House of Soul, which is always bustling. Never a quiet night at the House of Soul. And he gets struck by lightning on a cable car, and that leads him to gain the ability to hear the evil thoughts of men or the dark thoughts of people around him.
Now, if you were thinking when we explained the plot of this episode, gee, that would be a really good superpower to look past and through the disguise of somebody who could change their face and shape, you think, wow, that is a good matchup. The guy who can read the thoughts of evil people, the evil frequency of radio,
yes,
versus a guy who can disguise the eyes. Guess what? He doesn't use it.
No, because he doesn't meet the bad guy until after the show, like until it's already until he already knows that character can change his appearance.
I mean, the first time he meets him, he turns him, the bad guy, well, first face to face, the bad guy turns into himself. So he like clearly it's not, he doesn't have to puzzle out who he is.
Exactly. So it's such a weird thing, but Nightman has the ability to hear the evil thoughts around him, and he also comes into possession of a super suit that was developed by the military that allows him to fly and basically be bulletproof. And he has this weird red eye that can allow him to scan things. Like in this episode, he uses it to see through fire and find a body. He has a cloak that can turn him invisible, which I think noted turf J.K. Rowling stole for Harry Potter. And that's about it. So he has a lot of stuff. Oh, I think he can shoot a laser beam out of that eye at some point. And so he, is kind of a Batman type character. Like he has all these gadgets basically that he can do things with, but he has a slight superhuman ability, which is sort of a lame one, actually. He never really uses it that well throughout the show. Like it's never used to the extent that it could be used for.
Apparently, it also robs him of the ability to sleep, but that also is not brought up in this episode.
No, I think they maybe touch on that early on, maybe in the first episode, but it never really comes up. I think it's more of a factor in the comics, but I think in the show it barely like registers as being a problem.
Which is kind of weird considering he's kind of named after the fact that he can be up all night because he doesn't sleep.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So anyway, he has these abilities. He uses them to fight bad guys. And in this episode, he kind of fights someone with some powers. I don't know. I'm trying to think if oh yeah, no, never mind. I was about to say, like, is this the first sort of like superpower person that he has? And it's not, because in the episode prior to this one, he fights an alien. So,
oh, of course, that makes sense.
Or no, a beast from another dimension. I'm sorry, aliens are later on.
See, I was trying to look up because at the very end, our villain says he has a space face, which I thought maybe that's his comic name. He's not from the comics. There is a shape-changing enemy, not called Space Face.
What's he called?
He is called Death Mask.
Oh, okay. So maybe this is supposed to be their version of Death Mask.
Well, Death Mask apparently cuts off the faces of people he kills and uses them.
Okay. That's very strange.
That is very edgy 90s. I want to really... Okay, there's a lot of goofy things we'll mention in this episode. There's a lot of saxophone in this episode.
Oh, man, yeah.
There's swing music. There's vests with no sleeves. There's terrible side effects, terrible green screen and CGI. But I want to stress right from the start, this show could not be playing it straighter at this point in the season. Like, it is dead serious about what it's doing.
Yes. Yeah, this show is it never really it never like fully leans into the campiness. Like it's hard to tell because watching it looks so bad, and its premise and trappings are so goofy for adults to be doing. Yeah, like it doesn't seem like it's not geared towards kids, even though it is based on a comic book. But like, I don't think that kids would enjoy this show because it's kind of boring. But I think adults would enjoy this show. No,
it's more police stuff than like he doesn't get to be Nightman until what do you say, 30 minutes in?
21 minutes in is the first time he turns into Nightman, and it's to save someone from a burning building. And then he turns into Nightman at the very end to punch the bad guy off of a bridge.
Don't worry, he does have a transformation scene like he's Sailor Moon.
Yes. Which we see multiple times. It's the same transformation scene that they just play over and over again. Like
the use of footage in this episode, and I'll just put it as that, is bizarre. I would almost say the guest star thing, while being one of the worst scenes I've ever seen in television history, is not the weirdest trick played in on this show as far as footage.
No, it's one of those shows that like feels like I kind of it's weird because the guy who is responsible for this show, like the Glenn A. Larson, who was developed the show and was involved in getting this show onto the air, is involved in he's responsible for a lot of shows, like a lot of well-known shows. Like he was involved in Battlestar Galactica. He had a hand in Quincy M.E., The Fall Guy, BJ and the Bear, Magnum P.I., Knight Rider. Like he had a hand in a lot of like influential television series from like the 70s. I think he also did have a hand in $6 Million Man, and most notably, for at least in relation to Nightman, he had an involvement with Manimal. And Manimal is about a cop who can turn into an animal or a private detective or something. And Manimal crosses over with Nightman in season 2. So there is a Manimal reunion, or like a kind of a refresh in Nightman, which is really funny.
And also, season 2 is almost a complete reboot, and somehow even cheaper than season 1. So clearly they are working on a shoestring budget, which I think influences a lot of what this show does. But the notes have to be so like coming down hard on like, this isn't working, change this.
Yeah. So because like basically in season 1, you have Johnny, who lives in San Francisco or Bay City, and he plays at House of Soul, and he has a couple friends, Raleigh, who is his buddy, who has basically he developed the Nightman armor initially for the military, so he knows all about it. And then you have his dad, Frank, who is a former police detective, and he's around. And then you have Jessica, who is the owner of the House of Soul, where Johnny works and lives, which is weird that she owns this place that he lives above. And then you have Lieutenant Dan. Yes, Lieutenant Dan, a police officer who works with them and used to work with Johnny's dad. And those are sort of your core characters. And then in season 2, they kill off his dad and they move the entire production to Canada. So they recast his friend Raleigh and basically send Lieutenant Dan on vacation, who never returns. And Jessica disappears from the show. And she supposedly is in some episodes in season 2, but I have not seen her in the ones that I've watched.
I found, heads up, Josh bought me a DVD set of this. We watched it over several holidays together as a family. Because if nothing else, if you listen to the start of this episode, that's the theme music to the show.
Yeah, season 1, they screw it up in season 2.
Season 1. Almost everything that is badly charming about season 1 is robbed in season 2, and it becomes boring.
Yeah, season 2 is not as good. They do bring in like they bring in this sort of main enemy for him to fight during season 2. It's kind of like a more continuous storyline. I can't remember what the actor's name is, but Kim Coates, who was on like he's been in a bunch of stuff, but he was in Sons of Anarchy, I think, for a while, and he's sort of like the main bad guy in season 2, which it leads to them. We'll have to cover some season 2 episodes because his big thing is like the internet and like virtual reality. So there's a lot of people inside computers in season 2, which is pretty enjoyable.
I love the 90s obsession with going inside the internet, going inside computers. Like they were absolutely sure that that's what we do. And if you think about it reasonably, there's no reason why that we thought that so hard.
Yeah.
But there's multiple shows that's their entire premise is you would just go inside computers.
Yeah, and just to go back to Glenn A. Larson, who developed the show, he also had a hand in a show that I feel like we might enjoy called Automan, which is about
Turbo Teen grown up.
it's about a police officer and computer programmer who has created an artificially intelligent crime-fighting program that generates a hologram person who is able to leave the computer world at night and fight crime.
Fantastic.
And he goes by when he's in the real world, Automan goes by the government poses as a government agent by the name of Otto J. Mann.
Perfect disguise.
Anyway, all right, so
Does
let's
he drive,
talk about
is his fancy car the automobile?
The guy looks like he just stepped out of Tron, which is very funny. He's got like blue lights all over him.
So this show stars a Plymouth Prowler.
Yes. Yeah, Glenn A. Larson loves his cars because this is probably the Nightman is probably the most prominent example of the, at the time, brand new Plymouth Prowler because that is what Johnny drives. One of the most ridiculous looking cars I think I've ever seen. And didn't last very long. Basically, it came out around 97, and I guess they were giving him this car because they thought it made him look very cool because it was a new car. Like if this show had started a little bit later, would he have been driving one of those oh God, what the hell were those? I think they were also Plymouths, the ones with the wood paneling on the side.
Oh, yeah. The toaster box ones, the PT Cruisers?
Yes, the PT Cruiser. So I think
eventually he would get a Spider. But I mean, I'm thinking this is supposed to be like, because it's a throwback type of car in theory, a modern throwback.
Sure.
And he's kind of like, he's playing swing music. He's working at a club. It's kind of a modern throwback too.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Also, he's a douche.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, the Plymouth Prowler, which is just the silliest looking car, lasted till 2002, I think. Didn't really have a very long lifespan.
11,000 made.
Wow, 11,000. That's crazy. Like that. Yeah, it looks bad. The car looks ridiculous.
Don't worry. The gold version is called Inca Gold.
This one is purple because, of course, they only made purple Prowlers, I think, up to a certain point.
Because the Phantom was so popular at the time.
So anyway, let's talk about specifically this episode, Face to Face. And it is about. So it's kind of about face-off technology in a way. Like face-off came out in 97, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's weird to me that there's a thing, 97, a show about changing your face at the same time that this movie came out. And yeah, that's right, because the Face Off was released in June of 97, and this episode is in October. So they clearly were taking some inspiration from that movie.
And of course, Darkman.
And Darkman, yes, absolutely. But so there is an ex-con who was like a financial guru who robbed a bunch of people of their money. So he defrauded a bunch of folks. He was attacked, and he got some facial reconstruction surgery done by this doctor who has made it his life's goal to use these sort of, he calls them microchips, but it's sort of like a nanobot type technology that can repair your face. And we see this when he and this old man are staring very closely at a young woman's face, asking how much it costs, which is creepy in general because it's just these two old men leering at a woman and going, how much is it going to be? And they talk about prices. They talk about how great this technology is and how it's going to revolutionize the way that we do facial reconstruction. So you're like, okay, I guess. And he goes to the prison to work on this guy named E. Haskell Bridges, who is played by Cyril O'Reilly, a man who looks like Christian Slater and Jeffrey Combs merged into one person.
He is acting the entire time. Everything, he is just pausing and sighing and trying to sound sinister about everything. And
he's doing a Jack impression. But he's doing it worse than Christian Slater does it.
worse. And like he's got this like I'm hopefully it's his acting, but he's got this whole American Psycho energy, which makes sense because he's supposed to be a Wall Street shithead.
Sure.
But I'm just saying we don't give any of these crypto criminals fucking face changing technology.
Yeah. Let's not. What's that dude's name? The FTX guy. Let's not let him change his face.
God, can you imagine if his face was fungible or non fungible?
Whichever one means it can change.
Whichever one can mean it could change. You could turn it into an ape at any time. But
oh man, that would be something. I'd pay for that.
So Space Face here, he is like every time he's on screen. I think you're right.
I think that is his name. Like I think he calls himself that later on in the episode where this character returns. Spoiler alert.
Which spoiler alert, we also are covering.
Yes.
So if you want to watch ahead, but Space Face, like every scene he's in, I do appreciate that he's trying to make it memorable because for a character who half the time he has to be someone else, when he is on screen, you're like in a sea of white guys with black hair. You go like, oh, okay, it's the guy doing the Slater impression.
It's very funny.
I follow that.
It's very funny that he has to disguise himself as Lieutenant Dan later because they kind of already look alike.
And it is a show called Nightman, so it does take place primarily at night. But it is hard at times with SD camera to figure out who the fuck is on screen when they're all talking like this. And they're all kind of in the shadow. And they're all kind of angry at each other all the time, even though they're all friends.
Yeah.
And then the Scottish guy comes in, and we call him an oi, oi, oi.
So the doctor, for some reason, is also helping this ex-con fix his face, because apparently he was attacked by someone at this prison. We learned later that basically he wants revenge because Frank, Johnny's dad, and Lieutenant Dan, again, Lieutenant Dan, don't name your character fucking Lieutenant Dan in 97.
Do not name your character Lieutenant Dan. I can't stress this enough. Do not name your character anything from Forrest Gump. You just shouldn't do it.
But I have a very funny thing. Not only is this character named Lieutenant Dan, but when we get to the bank later, the bank manager who meets our very special guest star is played by Jim Hanks, Tom Hanks's brother.
I mean, I couldn't stop thinking that is just Tom Hanks's brother. Like, even if there's no way he wasn't Tom Hanks's brother. Doesn't he do all the voices for like
any video games where Woody shows up? Jim Hanks is getting the call.
Oh, Jim Hanks, star of Kingdom Hearts.
Pretty amazing that like that he not only has like all of those games on his resume, but then he also has this episode with this particular guest star who he probably did not ever meet in person.
Could you do voice acting gigs for your brother?
Maybe. I don't know. That would be. I'd have to like really. I'm going to see him soon, so I'll have to like really study his voice and see if I can get it down for whenever the inevitable video game role pops up that he needs me to cover for him.
So before I moved here and I lost most of my East Coast Canada accent and I slowed down my talking. And if you're thinking to yourself, Skinner still talks too fast, I've slowed down my talking from being a maritimer tremendously. Mentally, I am speaking at a snail's pace. But my brother and I could pick up the phone and have nobody figure out which one of us was. And we would pass the phone back and forth. And I once did that to the point where my mother cried.
Oh, no.
It was very funny to us.
So, yeah, he's there helping this guy. I guess this is also their Halloween episode because the doctor is played by character actor Frederick Coffin.
That is a fantastic name.
Such a great name. Like
him.
He should have been like a horror host on a basic cable network, like at midnight.
Specifically midnight. The witching hour.
Yeah. Welcome to Frederick Coffin's something or other.
coughing it up.
Yeah.
Cacophony.
Cough drops with Freddie Coffin.
Can we get some cough drops for our show?
It's just a sound effect of a person coughing. We're just dropping that in. So he's there helping this guy after he's been attacked, but yeah, we find out later that he's basically trying to get revenge on Frank and Lieutenant Dan for putting him in prison, but they put him in a minimum security prison because, again, all he had done was defraud a bunch of people some money. So, like, he hadn't murdered anyone or done anything that bad. He had just, he'd committed crimes, but they were white collar, pretty low stakes. So they put him in minimum security. He apparently gets into a fight with a guard there, and then the judge moves him to a maximum security prison where someone then slashed up his face, leading to him needing this plastic surgeon to help him, which means that, like, his anger seems a little misplaced. Like, could you go after the judge maybe, or like, because it turns out that his big plot is just sort of a lot of misdirection to try to go after Frank and Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, he frames somebody else.
Yeah,
which kind of takes up like four or six of the entire episode. When, if you really think about it, he could have just put on a face of someone right away, walked right up, got like within their in their breathing space, shot them, and moved on with his life.
Yeah,
he used his power to make lots of money.
Yeah, he has this ability where So the doctor, when he is unwrapping his face, he says, you've been doing your exercises. And he's like, yeah, two hours every day of, like, arching my eyebrows and doing,
well, he says he tells him that he should be doing 2 hours a day. And he goes, yeah, I've been doing 8.
Oh, I missed that. Okay, so that's why he's so good at this ability where he can make his face change at will.
That's why, if you really want to be successful, you got to do the grind. You got to be working 96-hour weeks.
He's got that grind mindset because he knows what needs to be done, which is making your eyebrows go up, smiling a lot, and wrinkling your forehead.
What a role this would have been for Jim Carrey 10 years earlier.
Yeah, he makes him do all these little movements. They look ridiculous. The guy's he's doing that breathing acting where he's like a lot. And the doctor says, like, oh, you could, with enough practice one day, some people might be able to change their faces completely. And he's like, yeah, that day is today, doc. And then he knocks the doctor out and pulls his hair off, which you didn't know this guy was wearing a wig or a hairpiece at the point that he comes in. But apparently he was, and I guess Bridges knew about this somehow. But he pulls his hair off when he doesn't really need it. They don't seem to know exactly what, like, they don't have his abilities defined very well. Like, he can change his appearance just by thinking about it, yet he also buys a bunch of wigs and makeup from a costume store that he never seems to need.
He brings it in a bag to one of the scenes, but in another scene, he turns into a character who they clearly did not know they had at the time. Hair and all, just by looking at a book cover.
Yeah, we're being very dodgy about who this person is, but when we get to it, it's, if you looked up the episode, but if you haven't yet, we just really want to focus on that and really build up the anticipation for it, because I can guarantee that if you don't already know, you will never guess who they got to be a guest star for this one scene.
We want to really stress this show is cheap and looks like shit, and this is who they got.
Well, that actually does make sense,
right? But yeah, like, it's the face-off problem of, like, yeah, but their bodies wouldn't be the same. The wife would notice the dick was different.
Yes, exactly.
But we're told he needs to. He goes on a shopping spree, buys all these makeup and hats and wigs and clothes, but we see him on camera just change his own hair with the black or white Michael Jackson video morphing technology.
They do reference Michael Jackson in this with a very off-color joke where when he buys all this stuff, he goes to his girlfriend who says, he's going to be the new man of 1,000 faces. And she's like, Michael Jackson? And he's like, no, like Lon Chaney.
Lon Chaney. The
Yeah.
kids will know that one.
Yeah, kids will love that reference. They also reference Fred Astaire dancing with a vacuum cleaner in a commercial, which I think was probably many years before this episode came out. I would imagine, but lots of good old references.
It is so God, like they go out of their way at times to tell you that like this is kind of a like the Batman animated series where it's like futuristic past, but at the same time like it very clearly takes place in 97.
The Fred Astaire thing apparently did happen in '97.
See, I told you it's the most 1997 show of all time.
With Dirt Devil vacuums.
And now we have replica AI ads always being targeted at me, telling me that they'll send me NSFW pictures.
Yeah, well, they want you to sign up. They want you to get that app. It's going to change your life, where you can chat with you can have a relationship with a robot.
I can't wait. I'm so glad I clicked on that link to send you those pictures.
The future is
forever.
Now. We've got replica AI on our phones. We've got Megan in the theaters. We're really like embracing.
They really think after I looked at that pervy AI app on Instagram and downloaded those pictures to show you, the internet really thinks I am super excited for Megan.
Yeah, they want you to go. She wants you to be there. So anyway, he knocks out the doctor. He turns himself into the doctor and escapes.
And someone can be stalked by the doctor.
That's right, man. If only he had turned into Eric Roberts. Now that'd be
something. Eric Roberts not on this show?
I don't know, man. And maybe he was still in that era of. Well, no, he wasn't, because this is also around the time of that Power 98 movie that we watched. That was like a year before
which could take place in this universe. Honestly,
oh, it totally could. You're right. Like I would love it if Johnny listened to his radio channel. So. The doctor goes outside, Bridges in the form of the doctor. He walks out like a fucking robot zombie or something, and no one seems suspicious. But he goes out to get into the car with this woman, his girlfriend, and the guy still as the actor, the doctor gets to kiss this woman, which is weird because she's young and he's much older. This is Samantha, I think is the character's name. And this show is so cheap and so poorly made that like even in low resolution standard def footage, you can tell that it is a different actor getting into the car from the long shot than it is when they cut inside and they're on a green screen. It's so bad. Like they couldn't afford to get that actor to go to that space to be outside that prison and have him walk up and get into a car. Like it's so cheaply made, and there's so much green screen in this show, like more than you would think for a show that takes place in ostensibly the real world. This is not a space show. This is not Star Trek or Babylon 5 or anything like that. Like they are in the real world, they have in real locations, and there is so much green screen that it is baffling to me. Like it's cheap.
There are two CGI parts that are baffling, and once again, our guest spot is maybe the most surprising use of green screen I've never seen anything like that before or since. Have you?
No, this is next level. We'll get to that in just a second here. So basically, Haskell has gotten out, and he now, and apparently we didn't realize this until later on in the episode, he looks different than he did before he got stabbed in the face. It doesn't mean anything to us because we don't know what he looked like beforehand. They never show a picture of him before the change or anything like that. So for us, we have no idea what the dude actually looked like. So it doesn't really matter. Which that could have been an easy fix. Just show us a photo of the guy beforehand so that when we see Bridges sitting in the police station and no one notices him, it's not like a surprise.
I mean, that is the main, like, we didn't, like, it's never brought to attention that is why. It's just like, we had to make that assumption at that moment for why he could just sit in the police station near everyone who's looking, who would know he's a criminal, who know they've talked about that he has escaped. Um, we would they would be know him, and no one recognizes. We're like, oh, ergo he must look different than he looked previously, but it is never called attention to it specifically in the episode.
Yeah, it's lazy. This is lazy. That's the easiest way to.
I mean, that's everything this episode. They couldn't even wait to shoot in fog later.
Yes. So he disguises himself as Lee, this new Lee Prescott, the new city councilman in the Bay Area, and he goes and tries to kill the mayor. So he does this because he is working off of this whole, I guess, well-known idea that Prescott has a lot of ideas, but the mayor is cracking down on them and doesn't want to do any of them. And there's lots of news footage about the press questioning the mayor about why she doesn't want to do Prescott's ideas. It's a very strange situation that the press would actually do that, especially not now. They would just let it all happen. And so he disguises himself as Prescott. He goes into the mayor's office, where she's just kind of walking around in the lobby, and points a gun at her and fires randomly. He's not trying to kill the mayor. He just needs them to be focusing on Lee Prescott for some reason. And we find out later that it ultimately doesn't matter. Like, it's not really important as to why he did that.
Yeah, and so a running thing in the episode is that Lee does not have a alibi for he keeps telling them, I know I'm not there. That wasn't me, but I have no alibi, so I'm just going to kind of take it. Like,
yeah.
And everyone's like, that's weird, and then somebody puts in a anonymous call that he does have an alibi, but does not explain what it is. A woman calls, and we see him hit on a woman, flirt with a woman at the club earlier.
Yes, because there's a scene of John. There's several scenes of Johnny playing saxophone, but in this one particularly, Prescott is joining him on the piano, and he's apparently very good at it. We see no evidence of this, but he plays a little ditty here and there, and yeah, he and Johnny are old friends, and apparently Lee used to come over and practice piano at Johnny and Frank's place when he was younger. But yes, he hits on a lady.
There's full songs in this episode.
Oh yeah,
full musical numbers.
Yeah, Johnny plays with two different bands in this episode. He plays with the Dragon Choir, which was around a lot throughout the first season of the show, and then he plays with oh my god, what was the band? The second band, like the Big Timers or something like that.
I had looked them up, and now I don't have it up. They're a real band, though. They are called Big Time Operator Band.
The Big Time Operator Band.
Real band, like if you remember 97 and the old Navy commercials, swing was back.
This was the time
moment.
This was the time of the swing revival, like this kind of era. I mean, we had Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, and we had like Scroll Nut Zippers, and what's that fucking guy's name who was like he was kind of like a proto Guy Fieri, big blonde, Brian Setzer in his orchestra. Setzer. Like you had all these bands that like kind of came out of nowhere and then disappeared just as quickly. I think there was like a good 2 to 5 year period where that was everywhere, and then it all went away.
And so, before I forget this, and we're talking about bad cuts, one of the worst, weirdest things in the show, as far as camera work, because it does not matter the plot, is that there's two Big Time Operator numbers in the show. The first one is very fast. The second one is a slow ditty about a hoochie coochie, and this one is slower. But they didn't want to shoot new footage of the people in the club dancing to this slower song, so they reused the footage of people dancing to the faster song and slowed it down at a really bad frame rate, and it looks fucking awful.
For a second, you will think, "Oh, my internet's slow. Something's happening to the stream." But no, that's just the episode.
It's I like just don't show a long shot.
Yeah, they could just not do that. Like, it's very funny that they just chose to reuse that footage, which that's not a uncommon thing, especially with this show. Like I said, they reuse the footage constantly throughout this. His transformation scene you see at least once per episode, and it's the same thing every time. So like it's not not that surprising, but it is still very, very funny. So we are at the big, I think the big moment here. They need some money. Haskell does. Haskell Bridges, the bad guy, Space Face. He needs some money, so they go to a bank, and he tells his girlfriend to call the bank and tell them that someone big is coming in to do a transaction, and they never specifically say this person's name out loud. They never say it because, and Skinner, you and I have talked about this. We think that they didn't know who they were going to get in this cameo role when they shot this scene.
So the entire scene is shot on green screen.
Yes. For that character, for this
that character,
person, it is all green screen.
It is all green screen. So everyone, it is just somebody in a car, and they walk into a bank, and people talk to them. So like everyone else in this scene is just taking place in the bank. They're clearly talking to nobody.
Yes.
And then somebody on a green screen is there and doing awful acting, which you'll understand when I say who it is, and it's these ungodly pauses between things, and then just scenes where he sits there and he makes a face because like they didn't tell him what he was actually reacting to.
So in your brain, if you're listening to this and you don't know who it is, and you don't know who the cameo is, in your brain right now, just think about who it could be. 97. Who could they have gotten to be in this person who would change into someone that could go into a bank and extract a bunch of money from Jim Hanks? So think about it really quick before I reveal it to you. Just think about it in your brain. It is former President Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. He takes out a copy of the 1987 book, Art of the Deal, looks at it and rearranges his face into 1997 Donald Trump, who does not look like that.
No.
And probably in 87 did not look like that at the time either.
No.
Changes his hair. He looks like he basically, when he does the CGI face thing, like the CGI morph face, he basically melts. And my God, it's too bad he wasn't on set, because man, we could have had we could have saved some real time if someone had just fucking Brandon Lee'd him. Like a green screen dropped on him or something.
So yes, and I'm trying to think, what the fuck was he doing in 97 that would have like gotten them to think that this is the guy?
I mean, he's always famous.
I guess he was in some TV shows around that same time. Looking at his IMDb, he has one.
When did the board game fucking come out?
He played, it looks like he played himself in an episode of Suddenly Susan in 97 and The Drew Carey Show in 97, in addition to this Nightman episode. He was in Spin City a year after that. He was in an episode of Sex in the City, an episode of The Nanny the year before. So he did, I guess he was just kind of one of those guys who was in the public eye, even though he hadn't started The Apprentice yet. That didn't come until the 2000s. So like he wasn't as out there, but I guess he just was that kind of person. 5 years
after Home Alone 2. I mean, like that's, so yeah, like, I mean, he was just kind of, I remember like when he got on The Apprentice, it felt like, oh, that's kind of weird. His heyday was 15 to 20 years ago.
Yeah, his heyday was late 80s, early 90s New York. Like that was his thing, and he was
Like
everywhere, and now he's a nobody because he's on this TV show.
yeah, like at first like he's kind of a nobody, or like everyone kind of knows him, but like he is uh way past expiration date. This is kind of a throwback thing. Isn't it funny that this guy, but like unfortunately, uh history has happened. So that's good. I mean, this is only slightly less embarrassing than him feuding with a Rosie O'Donnell impersonator on WWE Raw.
Yeah, this was 10 years before that, right?
I think so. So that uh things have happened in our reality that should not have happened. But this is so bad. So like he walks into the bank and it's just him, a little outline behind him, walking straight through, having no effect on any of the gravity or
No, it's clearly all him on a green screen because the background moves at the wrong pace. Like it doesn't. It's like a kind of a weird zoom, or the camera is moving in a weird way. Like you see it, and immediately it looks unreal, and it
and we're
never
watching
looks
an
good.
SD. If this was an HD, it would look unbelievably bad.
It's terrible. And he comes in and basically kind of responds to Jim Hanks, who is the bank manager. Again, they never say his name. He just lays out this whole thing of like, okay, well, sir, we can sign. You can do this up to 10,000 or whatever. How if you need more or whatever. And it's just Trump going, that sounds good. That should be fine. Thanks, Warren. And like that's it. He doesn't.
And he doesn't.
It's just so strange. And he's looking around. His mouth is opening. Like he looks like he was at the debates. Like just kind of agog at the people who would talk bad about him.
Yeah, like that look he has in his face where he thinks he's looking like sly and funny, but he looks like a moron.
Yes.
Which is how he lost the debate so fucking terribly once he couldn't talk over everybody.
Yeah.
But everyone refers to him as, I can't believe it's you, that guy, him.
Yes.
No one ever says Donald Trump or Don or the Don,
No.
which I always fucking hate.
So like
or the Donald.
Yeah, the only thing we see is the book, which they could have shot at any point in time as a pickup because you only see it in the context. It's close up in someone's hand. So there's no, they could have shot that at any point in time after they figured out who was going to be in it. And we were trying to figure out like, who else would it have been if it wasn't him? Because they clearly shot all that shit beforehand and then just laid in that footage after the fact. So like, who else would it have been? Like, I
That's
don't.
the weird part because
I don't
could
know.
Because it could have been. No one else would have fit exactly the same kind of way. It does make sense, I guess, to use him, but it also sucks. But at the same time, like he is a famous rich person. It does work within that, but. And I could see that they were probably trying to get him the entire time, but maybe it was because he couldn't make it. They weren't sure, or they had to film this and then can it for whenever they could figure it out. But there is no storyline or promotional reason other than they weren't sure they were going to get him. Maybe because they thought he couldn't. The timing wouldn't work out or everything else. And they had to. He was plan A, but they were worried they needed a plan B or C, that they never
makes sense.
say his name at all, at even remotely. And it is just the most weird looking scene. Like it's like, see, like when they put like John Travolta from Pulp Fiction walking into a room looking confused for like memes, and they just change what his background is. It looks like that.
Yeah.
It looks that shitty.
Yes, it does. That is actually the perfect comparison to that. Like the way that it looks, it's just so bizarre. It's so strange, and it's just baffling to me. Like the only other person I was saying that I could think is like that has that same sort of like weird rich guy cachet is like someone like Richard Branson maybe. but even that, I don't know if that's the right timing for that. Like,
I mean,
it's
they
like
literally
nowadays it would
could,
be fucking Elon Musk or something.
right, and he would do it. But also, like, you could put anyone famous in there. All they have to be is somebody that the bank manager would recognize.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they never say like, "Oh, I love how well you do at business." Like
Yes.
they just know that he's famous
There's
and
no
he's
like
good for
jokey
it.
thing that Jim Hanks says is like, okay, it's a deal, wink. Like there's
Yeah.
none of that, like
Nothing. No, like it is as impersonal as you could like he like the scenes where like your actors are acting to a tennis ball like in Roger Rabbit or something. Except for if you actually put the tennis ball in here, it would make an equal amount of sense for how much how they're being completely impersonal with who they're talking to. Like
yeah.
it would also work for the actual tennis ball if you put a face in the tennis ball. And also, if you watch this with anybody and they don't see it coming, unless you're a piece of shit, and hopefully you and your friends aren't. If you're offended by this, go fuck yourself. No one's listening to this anyways. If you watch this with most normal people, if nothing else, because they're just tired of him, when he shows up, when his face melts into Donald Trump's orange mess, like the reaction, because we watch it in a room full of people, is almost always, ugh. Like it's like you can just feel the air just pushing out of everybody all at once.
Yeah, I did find something that he had going on in 1997. It was 3 different instances of sexual assault.
Ha ha ha! Fantastic. We elected him president.
Yeah, pretty cool. 3 different ones. I mean, they were reported much later, but yeah, 1997, 3 different events apparently that he assaulted some women or groped them unwarranted.
What's impressive is this has never become famous for him. This isn't an infamous scene.
That was the thing that I wanted to bring up. Is so strange that even like during all of this, like everything that he's gone on, and people have unearthed a bunch of random shit. The thing about the Pizza Hut commercial where he's like eating the pizza backwards or whatever, like the stuff with Grimace, like all of these things that he's done in his time to try to stay relevant, to try to be important, to try to be in the news in some way. All of these things, this I have not seen anyone talk about. I have not seen anyone talk about Nightman, which just shows you how like minimized this show is, how no one knows anything about it.
And you could just cut him out of the footage.
Yeah.
And put him on all kinds of things to make fun of him. They could make an NFT from this stuff.
I mean, I'm surprised this must not exist anywhere. Like whoever would it's either the person who has access to this original green screen footage, which would be amazing to see, because how fucking terrible would it be?
Can you imagine the takes that weren't good enough for
Yes,
it?
exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's either they must not have the footage anymore, it must have been destroyed or lost, or they're on his side, so they don't want it to get out there.
Also, this episode written by Stephen Miller.
Not that Stephen Miller, but a Stephen Miller.
Stephen A. Miller.
Yes. We noticed that. We thought pretty ironic there. So anyway, he is
It's weird that the villain really wants to take down this woke mob really bad. And it turns out he's actually a good guy at the end.
Yeah, he realizes that Nightman is the bad guy.
The social justice night warrior.
Nightman's out there kidnapping kids and taking them to pizza restaurants. So he does this. He gets the money. Later on, we do get a scene with that bank manager, Jim Hanks, at the police station watching the footage that we already saw. It does the lazy thing of just showing you the footage from the show, not actually filming it from like a security camera or anything like that.
A security camera that's straight onto the middle of the lobby and about a foot off the ground.
So we see him see that again. He's like, he looked just like him. How was I supposed to know it wasn't him? And
I can't believe it seemed just like that guy.
Yeah, they talk around it so in such a weird, awkward, stilted way, but it's very funny. So at this point, Haskell decides to set the club on fire, the House of Soul. The way this scene is filmed, it's almost like you're not supposed to know who's doing it, because they shoot it with a person wearing black gloves, close-ups on their hands, close-ups on the gas can, close-ups on the flame, on the rag that they throw. Like, they're shooting it as if this would be at the beginning of the episode, and we're supposed to spend the rest of the episode trying to figure out who the arsonist is.
I mean, like, you could do an episode where there's a shape-shifting guy and just never tell anybody to the end there is a shape-shifting guy.
Sure.
It's kind of a bullshit thing to do, honestly, because no one could really predict that. But you can't... if you're going to do a mystery where the audience is in on it, like, where the characters are figuring it out, but you know the actual thing and you're just waiting for them to catch up, which is, at times, when done poorly, is one of my least favorite tropes of a TV show, where you have to spend 40 minutes out of 55 minutes waiting for everyone on the show to figure out what you've known since the first minute.
Yeah.
But like, the episode really isn't really doing that, except in the scene.
Yeah. Well, so what I think happened, and I think this has to do with kind of the very similar thing with the Trump stuff, is that I think this scene might have been for another episode. I feel like they might have shot it for something else, and I'm trying to rack my brain if there is any other time in the show where the club gets set on fire. That would be very funny if it was, but they just reused the footage. But I feel like this was probably shot for another thing, and maybe they realized that they needed Nightman coming in and doing some action before the end of the episode, and so they decided to just put this footage in here because
it doesn't affect the plot at all.
It doesn't, because it doesn't have anything to do with the plot. Ultimately, it's just he's just doing all of this stuff to misdirect everyone away from his real mission, which is to kill Frank and Lieutenant Dan.
Which the real redirect for that is just show up with a fake face on and do it.
Yes, but it's like he just keeps doing all these random crimes that don't really connect or have any real reason for being. And so I feel like it kind of feels like this is just footage that they had, and they were like, we need to figure out where to put it because we need an action sequence.
I can tell you other times the club was on fire.
Oh, okay.
Every Friday night when Johnny Domino is lighting it up with his saxophone.
Wow. I set you up for that one. Excellent. So yeah, the club gets set on fire. Jessica, who owns the club, is there counting all of her money that she got because of Johnny's hard work. And she smells some smoke, opens the door, flames blow in, she gets knocked out. We get Johnny playing his sax upstairs in his apartment, and he notices that there's a problem, some fire. So he turns into Nightman, flies down, breaks a window, and rescues her. And
is this her only real scene this episode?
Pretty much, yeah. There's an earlier shot of her watching him while he's playing, like the first big musical number. We see her in the control booth with a like radio microphone. I guess she's like a DJ or something as well, but like she's barely a character in this entire first season. Like she really has no real personality or doesn't really get much to do other than like one or two little episodes. And then he carries her out, and then she's saved, and then that's kind of it. They're like maybe the fire was meant to attack Johnny, not Jessica, because for a second they entertain the idea that someone's trying to attack her, but then they're like, nah, probably not. She's usually not here at this time, so maybe it was meant to attack Johnny, but ultimately it wasn't, because he doesn't care about Johnny. He just wants Frank. Which even when he has a chance to kill Lieutenant Dan, he just knocks him out and ties him up and then goes after Frank. So his plan is very bad.
Once again, because he can change his face, and until very late in the episode, when finally the doctor shows up and tells him that he even exists, he could have done it anytime because he can change his body anytime. He could just walk in and go, "Hey, I'm Donald Trump." And Frank would be like, "What the fuck is Donald Trump doing here?" And he's like, "Come outside and see me, Donald Trump." And he would have no reason to think that it's a fake Donald Trump. And he walk outside and he shoots him.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like he goes through so much. I mean, it's a TV show, so of course you have to like kind of hand wave away some of this bullshit. But like, it's so
So much of it is based around Lee, which doesn't go anywhere. And like, he is willing to. So the whole there's this long thing going on, and it's not crucial to the plot really, if you think about it. Where it was said like there's a person who called in saying he does have an alibi.
Yeah.
He says he doesn't, and it goes on, and they're like he's hiding something. He's hiding something, and then finally they figure out, hey, he's having an affair. And he's protecting his wife, and it
and the
turns out.
woman.
And the woman, turns out he's not really. They're just in the flirting phase, but it's still more than he should be doing. But also, he's willing to cheat on his wife to a degree, but he's also willing to go to jail and ruin his life forever to hide it.
Yeah, the reasoning behind it was kind of didn't make any real sense. Like he wanted to protect not only his family but also the woman who revealed her love for him because
Maybe he just
reasons.
should have not done any of it.
Yeah, probably.
If he's this, yeah, a politician doing this probably would do that. But also, if he's so passionate that he would lose everything over an affair that had no sex involved.
Yeah.
Maybe he would never have gotten to that part in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just because it has nothing to do with the plot, because he is just a misdirection.
Yeah, it's so silly. Like they didn't need this at all, and
he's not even a longtime character that we know.
No, it's like no, he's a nobody. Like we don't know who he is, so we don't care. Like
his wife, we do not see, do not care.
No,
there's just as many scenes with the girl who says she loves him, but seems her character's trait seems more starstruck with Johnny Domino.
Yeah. Oh, I've been to the club. I've seen it. You're so good. Like she just seems more interested. Yeah. In how cool it is that Johnny Domino.
We gotta say, like Johnny Domino, long blonde hair, ripped to shreds, always showing off all his arms and chest.
Yeah, Matt McCoy is a good looking dude, but like, or Matt McComb, I guess is his name.
McComb he does bit parts now. At the time, though, very handsome man. He's in a bath towel in the opening credits over sax music.
Oh yeah.
You gotta see like the show is doing the right thing of like, this guy is cheesecake.
Yes. But yeah, it's kind of just pointless because it's not like it's such a pointless plot that has nothing to do with it. Like it would be one thing if the city councilman were his lawyer that got him sent to jail in the first place, or was the judge that got him sent to jail, so that he was there and then that caused him to, get like, because they say the judge threw the book at him and you're like, oh, okay. So maybe the judge is going to be the person that he wants revenge on for throwing him in the actual maximum security prison that caused him to get his face cut up. No, we don't talk about that at all. That is not important. We just kind of move on and don't worry about it. So
don't forget the tension between Space Face and his girl, who he says is just kind of using him as a honeypot. But it does that. There's no point to it other than they're both kind of assholes.
Yeah,
like they make sure that we know that they're both sleazy all the time, but we know that when we hear him talk.
Yeah, it's
because he makes sure to sound like a sleazeball every syllable he says.
Yeah, so
she also calls herself a samurai shopper at one point.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the fuck that meant. That was so stupid. So there is that again. There is that subplot where there's the woman who called in, and then Johnny and Raleigh go figure it out, and it doesn't mean anything. It just basically gets Lee off. So then I think Bridges. Then this is when he disguises himself as Lieutenant Dan, and he goes to a big
He
gala.
cuts off his legs.
Yeah, he describes himself as a legless shrimp boat captain.
Falls in the ocean.
So yeah, he goes.
He does fall into the ocean.
Oh, that's true. He does.
No, he does.
He does go to this big gala event for a detective from Scotland Yard, where he disguises himself as Lieutenant Dan and goes up and asks when those limeys are going to get out of Northern Ireland, which is like, oh, you know, you were thinking a couple decades ahead, but you know, it's things are happening. So then he punches out some random guy, throws champagne in the inspector's face, and runs off. And basically now Lieutenant Dan is on he's on the most wanted list. Basically, the cops are looking for him, even though it's weird that it's weird that the cops would be after a cop without just saying well, who gives a shit, you know, they get away with so much.
It's on the news because all these
this is 97, less than 5 years after the Rodney King stuff. They wouldn't care.
Could you imagine if a scuffle broke out at a cop visiting other cops, a gala affair? That's not being covered by the news, let alone the lead story, and them saying it was a crime. What is his crime? He threw a drink at him. That's not a crime. Whatever. And this is.
I mean, he punched a guy. I guess that's the biggest. The biggest thing is he punched a guy in the face
for the law enforcement.
No, that's true.
But this is also the first time we get the sense that Space Face, which I'm going to keep calling him Space Face.
That's his name.
Has super strength because a guy comes out looking for who he thinks is Lieutenant Dan, and he turns around and there's Space Face in his original second recipe face, and he grabs the guy by the throat.
Yeah,
and the guy is paralyzed, and they're both the same size. Space Face looks like he's not that big.
No,
he's a wrangly guy, but he's in shape, but he doesn't look like he's super strong.
No, he's not. I mean, it's weird because he seems to have some sort of abilities because he's able to punch Nightman out pretty easily. Later on when they're fighting, but
he knocks Frank out with a karate chop, which fuck, it's not 1985. What is he doing?
Yeah, it's just such a weird it's just such a weird situation. It doesn't they don't go far enough to explain why the guy has the ability to do what he's doing. They don't bother really doing any of that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. This is a guy who has the build of Dean Winters, the guy that does Mayhem and from 30 Rock.
Yeah.
And he's for no reason given he's super strong. If he gets hold of you with his hands, he's like a fucking robot and he has metal hands and you can't escape because robots are strong. And he has microchips in his face, and I guess maybe something, but he's just a Wall Street guy.
Yeah.
Why can he grab people by the throat and they're stuck? This kid should have beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, it's very stupid. So there's a whole bunch of stuff he's on the run, and then they go to their dad's houseboat. He has a houseboat, and there's some shit that happens there, and they're trying to let Lieutenant Dan hide out to wait till the heat's off of him a little bit. And ultimately Space Face goes to the boat. He tricks Frank goes to get his car to drive away, to take Dan back to his home, to hide out. But then Space Face shows up dressed like Frank. He knocks out Lieutenant Dan, gets in Lieutenant Dan's clothes, then goes to get in the car with Frank. They drive out onto the Golden Gate Bridge. It's very foggy. Very foggy. And
it's very CGI foggy. It looks and every shot is like from just below his shoulders up on everybody
Yeah.
with his CGI fog in front of them, and then CGI fog over CGI Nightman.
Yes.
Oh my dear lord, this looks so bad.
So Nightman shows up at his dad's houseboat again. We didn't even talk about the fact that his dad sounds drunk half of the movie, or half of the episode.
It's very funny.
There's some slurring happening, which is pretty funny. And
he also looks like a retired man who would be drunk in his houseboat.
But yeah, so he takes him out there. Johnny shows up on the houseboat, finds Lieutenant Dan tied up. Then he goes out, dresses up like Nightman. I just say dresses up. He doesn't turn into him. He just dresses up like him. And then he goes out onto the bridge. They fight. He turns into Johnny. And then Johnny punches him off the bridge. And that's kind of it.
Because the way you say it like he punches him off the bridge. There's no sense that they're near the edge of the bridge because they're not actually on a bridge.
No.
So like they're fighting from the footage, the green screen. They're in the middle of the fridge and the bridge, in the middle of the bridge, and then he kind of
there was a fridge.
Yeah, he kind of moves him to the side, and like there's no sense of throwing or momentum.
No,
and then all of a sudden it is one of the worst CGI falling effects into the fog water, and it's like, wait. Why is he falling? He wasn't near the edge of the bridge. And there's no real sense of, for a guy who did crimes in a way that the rest of the population would consider impossible. And if you tried to explain it to a jury or the media, they'd say you're making shit up. It would be very important to catch him and imprison him.
Yeah.
And instead, Nightman casually does what he thinks kills him. Like just with no ramp up. They're just having a little fist fight, and then he's like, "Nope, you're dead." And it's like, "Wait, whoa, Nightman, what has happened?" So it's just like the escalation was out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like,
what's the Golden Gate Bridge named in Bay City?
Oh, I don't know. Oh, let's see. The
Golden Arches?
The Yellow Door Bridge.
It's brought to you by Ronald himself.
But yeah, it's they think that he's dead, and he's not. He is on a beach somewhere with his girlfriend, and he changes into Johnny for her, and she's like, "Ooh, I love that face. Do it again." And he's like, "All in good time, my dear. Me and this space face have lots in store," or something.
So we know that he is having sex with women as Johnny Dog.
Yes, so he is changing his appearance to look like other men while he's having sex with his girlfriend, even though his penis will not change. It will be the exact same. And
his fuck style, absolutely the same.
That's right. He won't. Yeah, nothing will change that dramatically about him. But I guess that visuals is important to her, and that's all that she needs. I mean, I guess he turns into that old doctor too from time to time. I guess that's one of the phases. I guess he turns into Frank. I don't know. Like,
what if her thing was older men, like really older men, like what a buffet he has given to her.
Does he turn into Donald Trump and fuck her?
No, but the real one would. But pay her too. It didn't even have to. He just would do it out of habit.
Yeah.
That's after 3 seconds.
You don't understand. I have to embody him to really get into character. So
get away from all those burgers. Get back in bed.
I'm gonna only eat a fish delight or whatever the fuck he called it. Yeah, so that is Nightman Face to Face. Great show, great episode. We are going to cover the sequel episode called Bad to the Bone.
See, that's the episode where he turns into Donald Trump again, and they make a piss tape that makes everyone thinks it's the real Donald, but it actually isn't.
Well,
They frame him.
It appears that in that episode he alters his appearance to turn the entirety of Bay City against Johnny Domino by looking like him and going on a killing spree.
Have you ever been in a town that's turned against some musician that hard?
Not that I know of. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think when I was growing up, were there any musicians run out of town on a rail? I don't know.
I think they made the Harmar Superstar here isn't very welcome anymore.
I've been to a. Did he do something bad? I can't recall. Did he have some allegations against him?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I thought so. I saw a show with him, and he was like an opener for someone, and he was, very. He was very antagonistic to the crowd because he didn't feel like the right. This was in my very young days of listening to music, and this was at an Incubus show, and
Fuck, really?
yeah, and he was the opener for them, which felt like a weird combo of bands. Like it didn't feel like that would fit. Because he didn't have any he was just singing along to a track. Like he didn't have any musicians on stage with him, so he was just kind of doing a thing. But he was out there just essentially fighting with the crowd like the entire time. He was doing shit, annoying them. Somebody threw a shoe at him, which he then grabbed and proceeded to hump their shoe and said, "I'm fucking your shoe, man," and then threw it back to them. He jumped down off the stage and got in front of the crowd, and then we couldn't see him from where we were sitting, but we did hear, "Oh, you spit on me, I'll spit on you," and then him hawking a loogie to spit on someone. So yeah, pretty cool dude, I guess, who also had some allegations brought against him.
Right. Fantastic. So many fantastic people. Maybe Space Face can turn into him for an episode and make everyone go,
yeah,
put on some damn clothes.
Yeah, maybe so. Because he's from Minneapolis, right, or around there.
Harmar is an area around here.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
all right. Well, cool. We talked about 2 sexual assault committers on this episode.
Yeah, the Harmar Mall, which is in Roseville.
Wow.
For people who aren't from around here, you wouldn't know that. So,
but yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode. We'll be back next time covering that sequel episode, Bad to the Bone. I'm excited to get back with Space Face, E. Haskell Bridges, which is pretty funny because on the IMDb,
he falls off a bridge.
He does fall off a bridge, but on the IMDb page, he's listed as E. Harold Bridges. So IMDb couldn't even be bothered to get.
Or his name is different in episode 2.
Oh no, but this is for the episode that we watched. So
there's no excuse.
Yeah, there's no excuse whatsoever. But yeah, this guy, he's a very interesting acting. We'll be interested to see. He does show up a show we've talked about discussing at some point. Silk Stockings. He shows up in an episode of that. So maybe we'll get lucky and we'll cover that episode.
I mean, Silk Stockings isn't going to be on the show. That is on the list.
Also in an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger from a year before this one. So,
I mean, he did the whole shebang.
Wow, he's also in a movie that we covered on Predictocast, TNT. He's the bad guy in that movie, and is
made an impact.
And in one of the Blood Fist films.
That tracks.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he's in an episode or a TV movie version of Murder, She Wrote, which we do have to also cover on this show. He's in 3 episodes of Murder, She Wrote.
Man, she should write less about him.
But that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back very soon with more about Nightman, more about Spaceface, hopefully less about Donald Trump. But until then, I've been Josh.
I've been Skinner.
And we want you to keep it weird out there, folks. Do it for me. Do it for Spaceface.
Do it for Spaceface. For fan favorite character, Spaceface.
You've been listening to Center of Weirdness. If you like this show, rate and review us wherever you find it, but especially on Apple Podcasts. You can listen to every episode at centerofweird.com, where you can also find all of the old Predictocast episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us to tell us about a show we should cover, hit us up on Twitter at WeirdCenter. As always, thanks for listening.